Jalapeños are not the hottest chili pepper, but they make an excellent daily driver kind of hot sauce. Every year we grow a bunch of jalapeños in our garden. And you don't have to grow your own, but I do recommend that if you're going to ferment a bunch of jalapeños into some hot sauce, that you maybe go to the farmer's market. Because the ones that are at the supermarket are gonna have a coating on them, well, potentially a waxy coating, some type of preservative that's gonna make them transport to the market in better shape and then last on the shelf a lot longer. So we're gonna be fermenting these chilies, and we wanna make sure that the skin does not have a coating that's going to mess with the development of the healthy microbes that we're trying to build up in the jar to preserve our peppers. We also don't want to risk it having any, giving us any off flavors. I recommend buying a lot of peppers, and you can actually turn this into two projects. We can have our fermented Jalapeño Hot Sauce, and then side project, pickle a bunch of the jalapeños. Let's say you want to go more mild, easy. So you take the recipe, and because it's all jalapeños in the recipe for our peppers, replace half of it with bell peppers. And that should bring you down to a more mild or medium type of hot sauce. Now let's say you want it extra hot. I recommend habaneros. Habaneros and ghost peppers, or habaneros and scorpions, or habaneros and Carolina Reapers. I've done it in the past. It makes an excellent hot sauce, wonderful flavor. I know I said 3 variations with habaneros. I just like the floral note that the habaneros have. I think it's a wonderful flavor. It will have a heck of a kick to it with those combinations, or whatever combination you want to make, and it will have a beautiful bright orange color from the reds and the yellows and the oranges of those chili peppers. So you can adjust as needed, and if you are feeling like adding cumin or coriander or mangoes or whatever the heck you want to do, go for it. This is a building block, baseline foundation recipe where there is room for interpretation. As far as aromatics go, because this is a baseline type of recipe, it's very simple. There's jalapeños, there's onions, there's garlic, there's salt. That's it. Why? Because I want to keep it so this is a condiment and not a centerpiece. The onions that are in the recipe, you'll see it's very low, very easy, very gentle on the onions and the garlic. Enough to add that zip and bite that they provide to give it a round flavor, but not so much that you taste it and you're like, onions, or this is a great garlic hot sauce. I don't want that. I want the flavor of the jalapeños. So you can adjust up or down. There's room for interpretation. You're the chef. The recipe is built on kind of a percentage of the salt. And if you've ever made sauerkraut, this is just like that. We're going to use 3% salt in our recipe. So let's do some quick math. Okay, in this recipe, there are 1,500 grams of jalapeños. Yes, my Sharpie is dying. And 100 grams of onions. Like I said, I'm going real easy on the onions. We've got 10 grams of garlic. All this adds up to 1,610 grams of, we'll call them veggies. And we need our salt to be 3% of 1,610. We could just call it 1,600 for easy math. Boom, we're doing math. So we need our salt weight. How much salt do we need? Well, if you take our total veggie weight, in this case our 1,600 grams, and we multiply by 3%, that's 3% written as a decimal, right? Remember math? And we get 48 grams. So we need 48 grams of salt to add to our veggies. I recommend rubber gloves for this project. So the same spicy sensation that the chili peppers put in your mouth, if you go bare hands and you cut these guys up, because you're gonna get that spicy sensation under your fingernails and around your fingernails. It's terrible. You can't really wash it off. You just have to wait for it to go away. It's no fun. So rubber gloves, highly recommend them. You'll be happy that you used them. You're gonna cut your peppers all up in a similar size. I go about 1/8 of an inch-ish. They don't need to be perfect. They just need to be close, neighborhood. If I were doing like a pickled jalapeno, I'd go thicker just because I feel like that makes more sense for that. But I want to fit all these in the jar, as many as I can, without wasting any space. So I cut up a whole bunch of them, and then I weighed them, and we know that they weighed 1,500 grams. Sliced up 100 grams of onions, put that into my bowl, smashed, peeled, smashed 2 cloves of garlic, and then just cut them in half into my bowl. So we have all of our veggies in the bowl. We know they weigh what they weigh because we already know our math, how it works. We got 1,610 grams of veggies. We need 48 grams of salt. So the salt goes in the bowl. I'm using kosher salt. Make sure you're not using like an iodized or something with an anti-caking agent in it. We don't want any additives in the salt to interfere with our fermentation process. Same with like something that's got like a lot of minerality, like some sort of colored salt. Go with something simple. Use a kosher salt. It's reliable. It's going to produce a predictable result. The salt is hygroscopic. It's going to draw out moisture. So you put your salt in, grab a spoon, start mixing it. We're going to mix it until the salt goes away. The salt's going to draw the moisture from the veggies, and it should become wet. They should start to soften a little bit, but these are peppers. They're not as full of liquid as, say, cabbage. So we're going to end up, we want these to be in a brine, but we're going to end up not having enough to fully cover them. We want them covered in brine so they're not exposed to air and we don't grow any mold. Mix them, get moisture coming out of them, cover them, come back in 45 minutes. In the meantime, I know that we're probably going to need more brine, so let's make some. And how do we do that? Well, this is a simple thing. We're going to mix water and salt. And can you guess what percentage our salt's going to be of our water? 3%. Let's do math again. Let's say, for example, that you had 200 grams of water. Look, I wrote it in the fancy way. That's fancy way for water. So if we have 200 grams, 200 times 3%, remember this is the way you write a percentage in a decimal, that's going to result in 6 grams of salt. So if we were trying to make a saltwater brine with 200 grams of water, we would need to add 6 grams of salt to it. Okay, so simple thing, you've got your water, whatever amount you think you needed. Clearly I've got like a big jar here of water that I'm pouring in here, my salt water. So it has 3% salt in solution. And I needed a decent amount here. So this is not 200 grams of water, this is much more. My peppers are in my jar, they're packed in. I'm cutting it kind of close here. I want to have about 1 inch of headspace at the top, even with the liquid in there, so it doesn't like overflow as more moisture gets extracted from the peppers in the fermentation process with the bubbling. I'm pushing the limit with this jar. So you can do the same, or you can be a little bit more conservative and have more room from the level of peppers and liquid from the top of your jar. And if you have a fermenting weight, this would be a time where you could use it. It's a glass weight. Usually there's other kinds, but it goes inside the jar and holds the peppers, the pickles, the cabbage, whatever it is, under the level of the brine. I'm not too worried about it. I know I'm going to get away with this. I've been doing this like every year we've had a garden. I do this. So I know that I'll just walk by a couple times a day and use a spoon, just open the jar and make sure that the peppers are submerged. So your call, fermenting weight, or just keep a good eye on it and make sure that they're covered in liquid. From here, it's easy. Like, it's just time. Now we're just waiting for time to happen. You're going to cover your jar loosely. We want there to be air exchange. We want it to breathe. Label it with the date so you know when you started it, and then go ahead and put it out of direct sunlight somewhere in your kitchen counter where you can see it. I usually put it on a folded towel because, granite's cold, and temperature is the thing that's going to affect the speed of fermentation and the activity level of that fermentation. They're gonna look beautiful. Like, they're freshly cut jalapeños, they're bright green. I've got some red ones in here because I harvested my peppers so late, which is gonna make my sauce a little bit more of an army green color. Whatever, that's fine. But it's gonna be a bright green color for the first 5 days. And then at about day 5, day 7, you'll see them start to turn, like start to kind of brown up and get more of that army green, a little muddier, browner color. That's cool. Like, it's starting to produce some lactic acid and some microbes growing in there. You're not going to see it start bubbling yet, like not to a point where you stand there and it's like, oh my God, it's bubbling. It won't start doing that until we get to the end of week 2. So on day 7, 5-7, you'll start to see a change in color of the sliced peppers. You could taste it every day. I recommend it. Taste it on day 1. It's gonna be like salty, spicy, and then taste it every day, just so you can be aware of the the change in flavor profile, and just participate in the process. On day 7 or so, you should start seeing some action, some little bubbles kind of coming up the sides of the jar. By day 10, it'll be way more obvious. You could stop and look and be like, yep, there are bubbles. And then by day 14, it'll look like this, where it's active and you can see all the liquid at the top of the jar here that wasn't there before. So it has drawn out moisture from the peppers as it's been, sitting. And because my jar is so full and my lid is on loose, I did have like a little leakage along the sides, not much, but you could certainly smell it in the kitchen. Like you walk in the kitchen and do I smell pizza? What is cooking? Like, no, there's nothing cooking. Oh, it's my peppers. So you should notice, some of that aroma of garlic and onions and peppers in your kitchen as they're fermenting. 2 weeks, this was at 2 weeks. I decided to go into refrigeration from here just to slow down my fermentation process. I actually spooned off just a little bit of that liquid because I didn't want to have to deal with any of it overflowing in my refrigerator. Lid on loose-ish, not as loose as on the counter, but still like it's not on snug. I do want air exchange in the fridge, and I'm gonna leave it for 2 more weeks. So 4 weeks total. I did 2 on the counter, 2 in the fridge. At the end of that time, what do we got? We've got jar of peppers, and I did not spoon off this much liquid. So while they're in the fridge, they reabsorbed a lot of that liquid. I just took off a little bit off the top. Sadly, I wish there was more liquid because now I know it's going to be a little bit on the thicker side. I'm going to have to adjust it when we blend it right now. So your call, you could leave them as they are and just have wonderful fermented jalapeños and use them however you like in sandwiches or salads or on your pizza or tacos or whatever. But I'm making a hot sauce. That's what I'm doing. I recommend straining your peppers from the liquid that they're in. Don't throw the liquid away, save it, set it aside, but it's going to give you more control over your viscosity. Like a Vitamix mixer blender for this, because it's going to make them really smooth, and that's what I'm looking for. I don't want a chunky sauce. I want everything to be completely obliterated, more like a Cholula Tapatio style sauce. It's not going to be wet like a Tabasco. And we're not just making a puree. We want it to have some, we want it to be a sauce. So peppers in the blender. I'm going to add some brine. I'm going to spin it. I know I'm going to use all this brine, so all the brine goes in, and then I puree it. And it's too thick. And I'm going to adjust the consistency, but I want something else also to happen. I like the flavor of what it is right now, so I'm going to add 3/4 of a cup of vinegar, white vinegar. It's going to stop the fermentation process. It's going to help preserve them, give them a little bit longer of a shelf life, so they last a good so the sauce lasts a good 6 months in the fridge or longer. And it'll kind of keep the flavor as it is now. It's not going to continue to ferment. So 3/4 of a cup of vinegar. It got me the consistency that I needed. Flavor-wise, it has salt in it, but it tasted like it needed just a little more salt, like just to round it out, just a little flat. I don't want to go crazy here because it is a condiment. It's going to go on things that are seasoned, but taste and season as needed to your preference. You're the chef. What if you added 3/4 of a cup of vinegar and it's got a nice flavor, but you don't want to add any more, but it's still too thick? Well, we could add water to make up whatever liquid you're missing to get it to the consistency you're looking for, or you could use a pickled jalapeno vinegar as an additional liquid to keep the jalapeno and the spicy flavor happening, and make up some of the liquid that you need to make it thinner. And that's it. I'm going to pack it up. I'm going to put it into mason jars. I'm not going to can this in a pressure canner because then it just kills it. It doesn't taste the same. It's going to be shelf stable as it is for enough time, so I'm good with that. So I pack it up mason jars and then store it in the refrigerator. Even using a Vitamix high-speed blender and blending this really smooth, it's going to separate just a little bit on you as it sits in the fridge. Not a bunch, not a ton, not so like it comes out of solution or anything, but you'll notice a little bit of liquid that separates out in the top. It's not a big deal. Give it a little shake, stir it up real good when you go to use it, and it'll be no problem. So I have 2 dates on these. I have the date from when I originally started these. I just put them in little jars, and the date when I processed them. So these took 4 weeks. Took 4 weeks to make these guys. Pretty simple thing. It's really just a little bit of knife work on the front end, and then you're just hanging out, waiting, watching your science experiment happen on the counter. I don't keep all my sauce. I give it away, a lot of it. This one's mine. This is all I have left, actually, 1 jar. But I have a whole bunch of jars of this. These pickled jalapenos, which can also be pureed into a wonderful little pickled jalapeno hot sauce. Very similar flavor. Different project, link in the description. What do I do with these? I send them away. I have some friends that every year I've been sending hot sauce to them. And this year is the same as every year. Hot sauce is an amazing gift. This is a cool project, but it's a fun one to share too. So make your sauce, save some for yourself, and share some.